Hey, everybody, I'm Jenna Anderson. I am the Thrive by Five Early Childhood Coalition Coordinator for LaGrange and Noble counties. I'm also a part of the Northeast Indiana Regional Early Childhood Coalition. And I'm just going to go through a few slides here that kind of talk about what the Early Childhood Coalition is. We represent all 11 counties in Northeast Indiana, including my counties of Noble and LaGrange. We are focused on helping with the affordability, accessibility, quality, and the workforce, helping to find and strengthen the workforce in early childhood. We know it's an economic issue. Look at these numbers. Over 14,000, almost 15,000 unfilled jobs currently in Northeast Indiana, and there are about 9,000 work-willing parents that would go back into the workforce if they had the access to affordable quality childcare. So here's a snapshot of where the regional coalition serves. We have full-time coalition coordinators in LaGrange and Noble. That's me. In Kosciuszko and Whitley, we also have full-time coordinators. And we are working on developing coalitions in the rest of the counties in Northeast Indiana. Okay, let's talk about grant writing. So, one of the things that the main reason we're here really is that there are a couple grants from OE CASEL that are going to be coming out very soon. At the time that I'm recording this, we don't know much about those grants. We know that one is capacity building, and we know that one is to support employer-sponsored child cares, but we don't know what the requirements are going to be. We don't know who's going to be eligible. We don't have any details about those. So what we want to do now is we want to get you ready to act quickly and submit those grants when they come out if you're eligible for them. We also want you to be ready to fill out any grant applications from community foundations or private foundations or employer foundations like PNC or Three Rivers or Do It Best or any of those companies that have foundations within them that you might be eligible for funds from. So one of the biggest things that you can do to get started and be ready now is to write your narrative template. So a narrative template is specific information about your program that will probably be able to be applied to most, if not all, grant applications. This is your story to tell. And what will help you is if you have your story ready to go when those grant applications come out. One thing that's important to do is to make sure that all your grant information is in one place. I have a folder on my computer where I keep my narrative template, where I keep some of the other documents we're going to talk about here in a little bit, where I keep all my previous grant applications. Plus, not only do I know where they are on my computer, but I also back them up to the cloud so that I don't lose them. Always a good idea. So create that folder, create that Word document to start your narrative template. We're going to talk about what should be included in that narrative template. And I think doing this is going to save you some valuable time and energy on your grants moving forward. In a lot of ways, you're going to be able to copy and paste the information that we are going to create in this narrative template. But, I'll remind you too a little bit later that you're going to need to reread that and you might need to tweak some things depending on the grant that you are applying for. So one of the first thing that we want to talk about is who are you? Think about what makes you different from other programs. We all know that we care for children, we educate children, but what's your niche? How do you do that differently? Why do you exist? How do you compare? I don't want to say how you compare, but how are you different from other programs? For our grant narrative here, ours is different than what yours is going to be because we were searching for operating expenses for Thrive by Five. So let me just give you an idea of what we put in our grant narrative. We help Noble County families with young children find the care they need so they are able to go to work knowing their children are safe, loved, and learning. So that's very specific information about who we are. It does give a little bit of information about who we serve, but not a ton yet because we're going to go into that a little bit more. And we talk a little bit about what we want to make sure happens through the work that we do. Parents can go to work, and children are safe, loved, and learning. So that's kind of our niche. So you're going to determine your own niche for yourself. Next, we're going to focus on who you serve. So, what are those populations? What are those ages? What are those income levels? What is your service area? Again, this is a place where you're going to want to be specific. Do you serve primarily low income families? Do you only have ages 3 to 4? Do you only have infants and toddlers? Again, focus on how you are different. You may be a child care provider who has all ages. That's great. But focus on if there's a location. I was talking to a provider yesterday who said she has people come out of her, they drive quite a distance to bring kids to her program. That is something to mention as well, that your service area isn't just the neighborhood that's around you. For Thrive by Five, what we said is we serve families with young children in Noble County, Indiana, by strengthening our county's child care and early learning infrastructure so that parents will have access to opportunities best suited to their child and family. So, do you have uh, uh, something that benefits a certain type of family? Are you what hours do you serve? Are you serving non-traditional hours? Are you doing second and third shift? Talk about those things here, who you serve and why you serve them. And then here's the big question that all of us need to think about. What do you need funded? What is it that you're asking for? Do you need operating expenses? Do you want to expand your childcare? Do you need to upgrade your kitchen? Do you need to add a playground or redo your fence or whatever the case may be? What do you need and how much? So, this is the point where you can be very upfront about what you need. One thing that I want to mention, though, that I think it's important is just because grants are coming out doesn't mean you have to apply for them. You probably have a lot of ideas in your head of things that you can do or things that you have in your strategic plan, programs that you want to develop if you had the funding. When you find funding that fits in with those ideas and those programs that you are already working toward, that is what you want to get funded. It's not a good idea probably to find a grant. Okay, hey, someone's willing to give up to $100,000. What could I do with that money? Don't develop new programs based on the funding that's available. Find funding based on the programs and ideas that you currently have in development. So I hope that makes sense. What Noble Thrive by Five was back when we were Noble Thrive by Five. Now we're Thrive by Five of LaGrange and Noble counties. Um, our request was for $75,000 for the operating expenses of the Noble Thrive by Five Early Childhood Coalition to continue its work to increase the capacity, quality, and affordability of childcare and early learning opportunities in Noble County. So, you could have, in this point in your grant narrative, you might have those programs and ideas that you have in mind that are part of your strategic plan. You can have different sections here. If you're talking about that kitchen, you're going to want a different amount and it's going to be for different purposes. If you need some funding for operating expenses, because we know that all of our families, shout out to Jamie, all of our families are operating on a scholarship because we can't charge enough to cover the cost of care. You can have different sections within this grant narrative on the different projects that you have in mind so that you are ready to go when funding is available for one of those projects. And here's really where it's time to tell your story. Why does it matter? What does the work that you are doing, how does that benefit the community? Why are you in this business? We know it's not to make money. We're here because we love it. We're here because we want to serve kids. We're not here to get rich. What challenge are you addressing and why does it matter? This is a good place where it's nice if you have parent testimonials, reviews, if you have Google reviews or things like that, or talk with your parents to get their stories. How has having childcare in your facility changed their life? What improvements in social skills or education have they seen in their children? How has their family been able to succeed because they have access to childcare in your facility and they are able to work and know that their child's getting a good education while they improve themselves by going to school or, even climbing the corporate ladder. Um, my grant narrative about why it matters was a little bit more depressing, I guess. It depends on what you're applying for. Um, Ours was based on more on the needs of our community and tugging at the heartstrings that way. So, what I did in my grant narrative is I had talked to a friend who, at the time, had a young child, and he was in a childcare situation that she wasn't comfortable with. But she didn't have choice. There wasn't anything else available, um, even around the rest of the county. So her statement to me was, I know that my children are not getting good care, but their sitter is keeping them alive, and that's all that I can hope for right now. So that was my opening of my part in my narrative that asks why it matters. She is a working mother who can't find quality childcare close to her home. And in addition to her, many parents with young children in Noble County are struggling to find affordable, regulated childcare. These parents want to work to earn for their families, but the cost of childcare, combined with a lack of quality seats in Noble County, prevent them from filling the thousands of jobs employers are struggling to fill. Without funding to help Noble Thrive by Five identify and collaborate with providers to increase quality and expand their seats, then the economy will suffer and children may not receive the quality care they deserve to prepare them for school and life. Noble Thrive by Five will be a catalyst for increasing the capacity, quality, and affordability of childcare and early learning opportunities in Noble County. This is so there is never a choice between parents choosing to work and their children being in an unsafe environment. So, this is focusing on why this coalition exists and how it's going to make a difference. And you can do the same for your program. Why does your program exist? And why are you doing the work you are doing to make a difference? Where is that need? Okay, one of the things that in this position, especially as Thrive by Five, we are collaborators. We are not doing the work. We are bringing people together who can do the work, and we are supporting childcare providers and other stakeholders in the community the best we can. You as well should be working with others in the community. Who do you collaborate with? When you're applying, especially for community foundation grants or private foundation grants, this is a question that you're going to be asked. You should be partnering with others. Who are you working with? And think about this now. If you're not already partnered with others in your community, how can you be? And who should those groups be? If you are not working with anyone in your community now, let's say your school system or with another childcare facility or employers or other nonprofit organizations in your community, reach out to your local school. See if you can form a partnership with them because you're going to be feeding children into their school when they get to be school age, kindergarten, first grade. Reach out to your community foundations. These are groups that are working with a lot of different organizations in your county and know most of them, and they're going to be able to figure out who it might be best for you to collaborate with. There are lots of other organizations that can help us with as well. United Way in your county. If you don't have a coalition in your county, I would say reach out to your coalition. But if you don't have one, reach out to me. I can talk to you about the work that you're doing and figure out who we can get you in touch with in your county to get you collaborating with others. In our case, in Noble Thrive by Five's case, our response to this was and it depends on the length of the responses. So we collaborate with dozens of people in the community. Sometimes we can be specific about that, and sometimes we can't. So, what I say in mine is Noble Thrive by Five Early Childhood Coalition works with dozens of organizations, employers, and individuals to increase the capacity, quality, and affordability of childcare and early learning opportunities in Noble County. From the core organizations of the Community Foundation of Noble County Economic Development Corporation, and Crossroads United Way, to the many organizations that make up New Community Initiatives, the Noble County Interagency Group, and the Community Learning Center Leadership Team, childcare affects so many throughout the community, and many are deeply involved in its solution. So in the case of this, what I was working with, for this particular grant, we didn't have the room to be specific about all the organizations that we worked with. So we just listed those major partners. Now, there have been, I do in my narrative keep a full list of the organizations that we work with on a regular basis so that if I have the opportunity, I can talk more about those information, those organizations. But it really just comes down to the space that's available in that particular grant application. So measuring success. I'm going to be honest, this is kind of where I struggle the most. What metrics do you already use to gauge your program, and how are you looking to improve? Are you looking at the number of preschool kids who go into the school system that you are most closely affiliated with? Are you checking the kids' progress all along your program to see how they are progressing and benefiting from the social skills and education that they are receiving through your program? How are you measuring that success? What are you looking for in your program? For us, it was a little bit more specific. Ours is about increasing seats. And, if you're looking for a capacity building grant, that could certainly be yours as well. So when we started out, my grant narrative for this said by 2023, our goal is to increase the number of childcare spots for infants and toddlers by 40. We are working toward this goal by partnering with the town of Albion and the Kendallville Daycare Center to expand the center's reach into Albion. I'm sad to say we're not going to meet that goal to have 40 new infant toddler seats by the end of 2023. However, I think by sometime in 2024, we're definitely going to be able to meet or exceed that goal. So your goals are going to change. They're not going to be set in stone, but always be thinking as you're developing these new programs and new ideas, always be thinking, how are you going to measure their success? Because that is one thing that grantors of all kinds, whether it's through the state, community foundations, private foundations, business foundations, whatever, they are going to want to know. That's probably the single most thing that you're going to get asked on grant applications. So keep that in mind. Okay, and I mentioned before that you were going to have other things that you're going to need to keep in that folder that you've created for your grant projects. So other things you will need include a program budget. So this is going to be typically the overall operating budget for your organization, something you probably have every year, so it's not a big deal to keep it updated. You may already know where it is. This is something you're going to need in most cases. The project budget now is the budget that is for the particular program or project that you want funded. So if you're replacing that kitchen, renovating your kitchen, adding a new play set, what does the budget for that specific project look like? Sometimes you may only need one. Sometimes you may need both. It just depends on the grantor and what they request. Something else to think about too, if you are looking at a project budget, who else is going to be contributing to this? A lot of community foundations, especially, they don't want to be the sole supporter. They want to know that you have other community buy-in. So is your board of directors contributing to this? Do you have other grant funds? Do you have other private donations that are part of this? That's not to say they're not going to approve your request if there are no other funders, but it definitely does help your case if you do have other funding available for this project. Keep an updated board of directors list. This was something that when I got into grant writing, I didn't even realize I would need, but a lot of grant applications, especially United Way grants, asked for this. So having that updated list handy that you can just grab and upload will be beneficial to you to save you time. Main program staff introductions. This is also something I never thought I would need, but especially if you are doing a specific program or developing a new program or project, talk about the people that are going to be heading up that effort. When you're looking especially at those community foundation dollars, that is something, it gives them a little extra to get to know your program and the people working on this project. It's not a make or break. It's not strictly necessary. Some may ask for it, most likely will not. but just something to keep handy just in case. It's a good introduction and gives another level of connection to your program and the funders. And then those of you who are nonprofits, you are going to need your nonprofit designation documentation. And those of you who are nonprofits know what that is. If you are for profit, if you're a for profit home program or a licensed center, you're typically not eligible for a lot of foundation grants because typically their guidelines only allow for donations to nonprofits. However, because childcare is such an issue, there are a lot of organizations that are making exceptions. So there are coalitions. You can have a coalition if you have one in your community. Sometimes coalitions can apply on your behalf and pass the funding through to you. There are some foundations who are working on projects and new ways of contributing funds that would be eligible to be received by for-profit childcare providers. There are lots of things that are happening right now to make sure that our childcare providers are supported, regardless of whether they're for-profit or nonprofit. So don't automatically assume that you are not eligible for funding if you are a for-profit home or ministry or facility. Have a conversation with the grantors. There might be other programs or loopholes that you will be able to benefit from. So don't give up. There is probably funding available for you as well. And I'm happy to talk to you more about that if you're a for-profit program. We can look and see what other funding might be available in your community for you too, because you are just as important as everybody else, and we want to make sure that you are supported with project and program dollars as well. Okay, we're going to talk a little bit now. Let me take a swig of water. We're going to talk a little bit now about what to do and what not to do. These are the do's and don'ts of grant writing. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. A lot of these are going to be repeats and opposites of each other, but this is just me pointing out what I think are the most important things to think about when you're doing a grant writing, when you're doing a grant. Okay, first of all, make sure that you understand the grant guidelines. Read them carefully to ensure that your project or program fits with who they are and what they are willing to fund. Every application is going to be slightly different. Every funder has slightly different guidelines. Make sure that you are reading it before you apply and make sure that you have a good understanding of it. And we'll talk a little bit more about if you're unsure at this step, there's some other things that you can do. What I do want to suggest is that many funders have a sample application packet that you can download. I always recommend that you do this. Not all grants can be started online and saved and then submitted later. Some can, but not all of them can. So if you have the opportunity to grab the application information in one way or another and work on it offline, that's going to be very beneficial to you to make sure that you're understanding everything and have all the correct information you need before you submit your grant. Okay. Learn as much as you can about the grantor. Like I said, these granting organizations are very different in a lot of ways. Some have very limited guidelines for what they will fund. Some are much more broad. Most of them are going to have websites. You might be able to access their 990 to find out more about their giving. Think about things like what is the percentage of grants they fund? That's going to let you know how good your chances of success are. So if you only have a 10% chance of success and it's a $3,000 grant, maybe it's not worth your time to do that grant and you should focus on some others. Like I said, visit their website, look them up. And the next part of this is key as well that can give you some of that information we just talked about. Reach out to that grantor. So they want to talk to you too. If you're going to be submitting a grant application to them, they want to know what to expect. A lot of times this is going to be possible. Send them an email, give them a call. Unless they just specifically say not to contact them, please contact them. For instance, the last Closing the Gap grants offered 15-minute virtual meetings to ask questions. That was awesome. I took advantage of that twice. Um, but for local organizations or national organizations, emails or calls are typically welcome to ask questions about their granting process. Now, something else to think about that my grant writing certification process taught me is if you reach out to them by email or you call them and they don't return your call or return your email, maybe it's not an organization that you want to spend time applying for their grant. So, just something to think about if they can't take the time to respond to you. What are the chances maybe that you will be eligible for that grant? So, just something to think about when you're thinking about the time that you have available to work on grants, which probably isn't much. That's why we're here today. Um, and the grants that are available to you. Happy to talk more about that too. And something else to keep in mind, yes, we're making a template for our grant narratives, but you are going to need to tailor your templates for a specific grant. Understanding those grant guidelines is going to help you do that. So look at your template, what you've already written, and read it compared to those grant guidelines or the question that's being asked, and make sure what you're saying fits within them. Always, always, always reread your prepared templates before you submit them. You may have to make a few different tweaks. And what I want to mention too is you might come across a grant that has a unique question that you haven't been asked before or something you didn't think about. Save that, respond to that, and save it in your grant template because you might run into it again. It is something that could benefit you. So just because we've listed out certain things here that you want to have in your grant narrative doesn't mean there aren't other things that you're going to come up with or see and want to include in that for future reference. And, we mentioned the time that we have to work on grants during the live presentation at the very beginning. And I think again here, I said, how many of you have time? There were 28 people in the room, I think. I said, how many of you have time to write grants? And not a single person raised their hands. I was so shocked. You probably can't. I hope you can sense my sarcasm because you can't see my face. But it can be tough to find the time to work on grants. You have teachers who are calling in, so you're needed in the classroom. There's an emergency here. You got to put out a fire over here. But scheduling the time that you need to complete the grant by the deadline on your calendar is probably going to give you the best chance of getting the work done on time. I tend to start working on a grant maybe 3 months out from its deadline, and I put work time on my calendar at least a couple hours every month. I know that if I get in trouble one day and I'm not going to be able to work on it, I have it on my calendar. So what I do is I just reschedule it. I put it in for the next day or the next week, but I just keep it on my calendar to make sure that I get it done. Something else that I do is I give myself some lead time. So let's say the grant is due on March 1st. I may put on my calendar that I want to submit the grant on February 25th. That ensures that if something happens and I'm unable to get the grant submitted on February 25th, I still have 5 or 6 days. February is a short month, so I might want to schedule a little farther out than February 25th, but I still have, usually a week. I try to give myself a week to get that grant submitted before the actual deadline for the grant. Things happen, and I think you guys will certainly agree to that. Okay. We talked about this a little bit going through. Be specific in your writing. Write about your organization, telling your story in your own words. You might have specific language that you already use to talk about your organization when you're talking to parents. Use that everywhere. Use that in your marketing on social media. Use that in your grant writing. Use that anytime that you are talking about your organization. People are going to start to pick up on that. They really are. Another important thing that I have struggled with for a very long time, have other people read and proof your narrative and your grant application before you submit it, and have as many people as possible do this. I will tell you, For years and years and years, I wrote a library newsletter. I would have 6 people proof it every month, and still we would find mistakes after that newsletter was printed. It never fails. So it's very important. Even if you have had somebody read it and you change a sentence, have somebody read it again, because I can't tell you how many, in being in a hurry to get things done, how many times I have changed a simple sentence and left out a word or spelled something wrong. Um, it can be difficult, especially if you are, let's say you have a typo. We had a typo in something recently. Um, it wasn't caught because the word was card, CARD, and the word should have been care, CARE. So it was a word. Autocorrect didn't catch it. When we were reading through it to ourselves, our minds just showed us that it was care. We didn't even recognize that it was the wrong word. So, one thing that you can do to help minimize mistakes like that is you can read your writing out loud. So, read your grant narrative, read your applications out loud, because that's going to help you focus on every word. You might be missing an and or a the, or you might find that instead of care, you've put card. You're going to catch some of those mistakes that you might not catch if you were reading it to yourself. That's one of my big tips for the day. All right. So, moving on to the don'ts. This is kind of, again, I said we're going to do some of these are going to be the opposite of the do's, just to make sure that I stress how important they are. Don't mimic the grantor's language in your application. Use your own words. We talked about this just a couple slides ago. This bit of information came directly from a private foundation that uses specific language. That's not to say you can't use words that you use that they also use, but stay away from full phrases that they might use. For instance, the DECO Foundation uses self-sufficiency and economic freedom. Those are two of the key words that the DECO Foundation uses. For our work, self-sufficiency, helping kids become self-sufficient, is definitely something that I can see using, in our own words to talk about the work that we're doing. But typically, you're not going to hear a child care provider talking about economic freedom. So you don't want to use that phrase necessarily in your grant writing, especially if you are applying to the DECO Foundation, for instance. What you could say is that our programs develop self-sufficiency in children so they can be more independent as they grow. So that is saying what the DECO Foundation appreciates and wants to do with their grants, but not using their words. It's using your own language. So be careful about that when you're reading those grant applications. If any unique phrases like economic freedom jump out at you, probably not best to use them in your application. I don't think that this is going to be an issue with any of us, but it's something that I've run into recently, so I think it's important to mention. Don't talk badly about other programs in your community, or place blame or anything like that. When you're writing a grant narrative, when you're applying for a grant, it's all about you. It's all about the great work that you are doing in the community. Focus on why you're an asset. Focus on how you benefit your community. Don't focus on what other programs are doing badly. For instance, our community foundation is a catalyst for positive change. So if your grant application is negatively focused on somebody else, the chances of you getting funded are probably diminished some. And I can tell you from my personal experience that, these have been different situations than grant applications, but I haven't twice now. I haven't hired a company or individual because instead of being focused on themselves and what they can provide for me and my company, they were focused on why others weren't worthy. They were talking bad about their competitors. That to me is terrible. Focus on the work that you are doing and how you can benefit your community and how you are supporting children and families and schools in your community. Like I said, I don't think that's something you're going to do, but I just want to mention it just in case. And back to this whole collaboration thing. Don't work alone. You should be collaborating. Like I said, reach out to others in the community if you aren't already collaborating with people to see who might be able to work with you and who might support you, and you can support them in turn. Reach out to the community foundation, reach out to me, whatever. We'll get you connected with others in your community if you aren't already. And then back to that scheduling. Don't submit grant applications at the last minute. Put it on your calendar, plan ahead. Make sure that you have given yourself plenty of time to work on that throughout the month, even months leading up to it. Um, don't get yourself in a situation where you are scrambling at 11:59 and the applications due at midnight. Don't do that. Get it on your calendar, and give yourself some lead time so that if something comes up, you can still find the time that you need to get the work done. Okay, so we're going to talk about finding grants a little bit. We're almost wrapping up here. So finding grants in your community shouldn't be that difficult. Most of our communities have community foundations. These are organizations, they're public organizations that the community gives funds to. And then some of the funds are designated, some are undesignated. And so they typically have grant cycles 2, 3, 4 times a year. Family foundations, these are private foundations like the James Foundation, Deco, Bayer, Cole. The Shurak family has recently started a foundation. So they have websites, they have their applications online, especially when it comes to a family foundation. If I've tried to reach out to them, especially via email, I have had no problem getting a return email back with my questions answered. One of the other things that you can do, obviously, if we have some state grants, OE Castle is going to send that information out. You're going to get it through the normal channels that you get information about your, childcare guidelines and rules and things like that. So you know where to look, I think, for the most part for that. What we did talk about during the live session is the Monday must-knows. So we're all going to find out about these OE Castle grants at the same time, and chances are it's going to come through those Monday must-knows. You can get those email or text. So if you want to go to OE Castle and get on that email list, if you're not already, that is probably the single best thing that I did when I started this position in order to be able to get information, was to get on those Monday must-knows. Those are excellent emails, and I look forward to them every week so I can find out what's going on. If we're looking for other local grants or national grants or something like that, there is grant search software out there. I am familiar with Instrumental, which is grant search software. It's amazing, but it's expensive. It's expensive. I can't even say that. It's expensive. It's about $195 a month. When I was reading this out loud to myself at home, kind of practicing, I read that part about it being $195 a month, and my husband's like, "Oh, that's not bad. That's expensive. That's not expensive." Well, keep in mind he works for a for-profit organization that actually makes money. So to him, that's nothing. To us, we know it's a lot. So, but what you can do, and I don't think I'm speaking out of turn here because, hey, they offer it. There is a 14-day free trial that you can get into Instrumental, and probably other grant software options have a free trial as well. During that time, you can go in, you can create projects, which will allow you to pull potential grant information that's available nationally or locally. You can download that, and then you have a variety of grants right at your fingertips. You can see what those grants are, where their website is. And so that's information that you can keep to help you in the future that you can gather during that 14-day free trial. Talking about determining what grants to apply for, especially when we're talking about national grants, is a whole another presentation. And if any of you have questions, more specific questions about this, I'm certainly happy to talk to you offline about it. But you need to make sure that you are, as you're pulling those national grants, make sure that you're in their service area, their program area. You are the correct organization type, that your programs match their grant criteria, that you have a chance of getting the grant. There's lots of things to look for to make sure that national grants especially are suitable for your application. But if you are interested in learning more about that, feel free to, I think my email is at the end of this, so feel free to contact me and we can talk about that offline. But you want to make sure that the grant you're applying for, that you have a chance of getting, because you don't want to spend time and resources on a grant that is just, you're not going to get it. One of the big things, and this is a link that you're probably not going to be able to access, so I will try to have a link in the email that I send out this video with. One of the things that I am using as I'm talking with people and applying for grants is a child care impact study that was prepared by Thomas P. Miller and Associates on behalf of Ambassador Enterprises and the Regional Chamber of Northeast Indiana. This is an excellent study and will be super beneficial to you, especially when we're talking about capacity building. So here is, let's flip over to this slide. Here is just kind of a snapshot of what that study showed us. So we have, like I mentioned earlier in the beginning, we have about 9,000 work-willing parents in Northeast Indiana. If we had childcare seats to put those 9,000 work-willing parents back into the workforce, they would gain $570 million in new wages, new income. Employers would get an estimated gain of about $1.1 billion in gross regional product, and the state would get about $36 million-ish in new state sales tax and income taxes. So that is a huge, huge return on your investment, and that would be incredible for the economy if we were able to put those, if we had a place for children of those 9,000 families to go to for care and education. This slide also does break that down into a TRISHARE program. That is one of the regional bills that is being looked at right now, is developing a TRISHARE program to help with the cost of childcare. If every sector, parents, employers in the state contributes $23 million, the parents are still gaining $547 million in income. They would be gaining a lot less than that if they had to pay the full cost of childcare on their own. Employers are still gaining over $1 billion in that gross regional product, and the state's still gaining between $7 and $14 million in income and state sales taxes. So it is a great return on investment. That is great information to use in your grant applications, especially when it comes to building capacity. Okay, and that's it for my part of the presentation to the childcare providers about getting grant ready. We will do our best to share the information with you about the grants as they come out. Like I said, you guys are going to receive it probably the same time that we will. If you have any questions, my email address is there, my phone number is there. You can call or text me or email me anytime. Even if you're not in Noble and LaGrange counties, I'm certainly happy to help and can connect you with people in your own county if there's someone available there to assist you. So happy to help any way I can. Reach out if you have any questions or just need some support. Thank you so much for listening today, guys, and I hope this helped you kind of save some time and get ready for the grants that are upcoming, and maybe help you find some other grants to continue the amazing work that you are doing to care for and educate our children in Northeast Indiana.